Admiral Jinha stood at the bridge of the Soul's Pride, watching the Earth grow smaller through the viewport. 3 years ago, he would never have imagined leaving his home planet to meet aliens. 3 years ago, humanity was alone in the galaxy, fighting a war they could not win. The Vorth swarm had come from the dark space between stars. They were not like anything humans had ever seen. The creatures looked like giant insects, but they moved through space without ships. Their bodies were hard as metal, and they could survive in the cold vacuum. They ate everything: metal, rock, even the energy from stars. At first, Earth's military thought they could fight them. Human ships were fast and well-armed. Human soldiers were brave and smart, but the Vorth just kept coming. For every one they killed, 10 more appeared. They consumed entire moons, then moved to the planets. Mars fell first, then the outer colonies. Ginha had been a young captain then, leading a small patrol ship. He watched the Vorth tear apart the mining station on Europa. He saw them strip the metal from the hulls of evacuation ships while families were still inside. The screams on the radio haunted him even now. Earth's leaders knew they were losing. The Vorth were too many, too hungry, too alien to understand. Humanity had maybe 2 years before the swarm reached Earth itself. That was when the Council came. The Galactic Council's ships appeared one day in Earth's outer system. They were beautiful, long and curved like art pieces, glowing with soft light. Nothing like the brutal war machines humans had built to fight. The Vorth, when they spoke, their voices were musical and calm. "Come in peace," they said. "We have watched your struggle. We can help." Ginha remembered that day clearly. He had been in the room when Ambassador Heron first met the Council representatives. She was young for a diplomat, only 32, but she was the smartest person Ginha had ever met. She spoke 6 languages and could read people like books. The Council beings were strange. The Althorians looked like walking crystals, tall and thin, with light dancing inside their bodies. The Netheri were clouds of gas that somehow held together and spoke with voices like wind. There were others too. The Corvani, with their 4 arms, the Zelthic with their huge eyes. "Your species interests us," the lead Althorian had said. Its voice sounded like music boxes. "You fight with ... creativity. Most species surrender to the Vorth. You keep finding new ways to hurt them." Harin had been so excited. Here was proof that humanity was not alone. Here were beings who had survived in the galaxy for thousands of years. They had technology that could save Earth. "What do you want from us?" Harin had asked. "Partnership," the Althorian replied. Join the Galactic Council. Follow our laws. Help us with small problems, and we will help you with your big one." Ginha had not trusted them from the start. Something about the way they looked at humans reminded him of scientists studying lab animals. But Harin saw hope where Ginha saw danger. The negotiations took months. Council wanted many things. They wanted to study human military tactics. They wanted to place observers on Earth ships. They wanted humans to serve in their fleets when called upon. "It's a fair trade," Harin told the Earth Assembly. "We give them our knowledge of fighting the Vorth, and they give us the technology to win." But Jinnah noticed things that worried him. The Council asked too many questions about Earth's defenses. They wanted to know about human psychology, about what made humans fight so hard. They seemed more interested in studying humans than in saving them. His friend Quan noticed it too. Quan was the best engineer in the fleet, a man who could fix anything with spare parts and stubbornness. He had been working with Council technicians to upgrade human ships. "Something's wrong with their tech," Quan told Jinha one night over. "Drinks? It's too good, too perfect. Like they've been building it for thousands of years just to fight us?" "Fight us?" Jinha asked. "Think about it," Quan said. "They show up just when we're about to lose. They know exactly what we need. They have weapons that are perfect for killing humans. But they call them defensive systems, and they keep scanning our ships when they think we're not looking." Jinha brought these concerns to Harin, but she was too focused on the bigger picture. The Council was offering humanity a place in galactic civilization. They were offering technology that could stop the Vorth forever. She could not see the trap that Ginha felt closing around them. The treaty was signed on a Tuesday. Jinha remembered because it was raining in Seoul, and he thought that was fitting. Council promised to help humanity defeat the Vorth swarm. In exchange for military service and technological cooperation, within weeks, Council ships arrived in Earth's system. They were huge, the size of cities, with weapons that could crack planets. The Council said they were there to help, but Jin noticed they positioned themselves perfectly to blockade Earth if needed. The first test came quickly. The Council contacted Earth's military with a simple request. There is a small rebellion in the Outer Rim, they said. A few worlds that refuse to follow galactic law. We need human ships to help us restore order. It will be good practice for your crews. Heron thought it was perfect. Humanity would prove itself as a valuable ally while gaining experience with galactic warfare. She convinced Earth's leaders to send a large fleet. Jinha was given command of the mission. 60% of humanity's remaining military strength would travel to the Kepler 442 system to deal with these rebels. It was an honor, Heron said. It showed how much the Council trusted humanity. But as Jinha prepared his ships for the journey, Quan made a disturbing discovery. The Council's maintenance visits to human ships had left behind more than upgrades. They had left behind tracking devices and remote access systems. They can shut down our ships anytime they want, Quan told. They can track us anywhere in the galaxy. Know everything about our capabilities. Jinha felt the trap closing, but it was too late. The orders were given. The fleet was ready. Earth's leaders were committed to the mission. As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Jinha looked back at Earth one last time. He had a feeling he might never see it again. Council had been too helpful, too perfect, too ready with exactly what humanity needed. But maybe he was wrong. Maybe Horan was right, and this was humanity's chance to join the galaxy as equals. Maybe the Council really did want to help. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying humanity's hopes and most of its remaining military power toward the Kepler 442 system. Jinha did not know it yet, but he was leading his people into the greatest betrayal in human history. Behind them, Earth continued its slow dance around the sun, protected by Council ships that might have been guardians or might have been jailers. Heron worked in her office, planning humanity's bright future among the stars. None of them knew that the Council had never intended to save humanity. They had only intended to use them. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace in the Kepler 442 system, and Admiral Jinha knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. "Sir," called Lieutenant Park from the sensor station, "I'm reading massive energy signatures ahead. This isn't a small rebellion?" Jinha stared at the tactical display, his stomach dropping. Instead of a few rebel ships, the sensors showed hundreds of vessels. Massive Council warships formed perfect battle lines across the system. These were not the elegant, peaceful ships that had visited Earth. These were weapons of war, bristling with guns and shields. "Open a channel to the Council fleet," Jinha ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a being Jinha had never seen before. It looked like the Althorians, but darker, with red light pulsing through its crystal body. When it spoke, its voice was cold as space. "I am Admiral Vexthera of the Council Defense Force. You are Admiral Jinha of the human fleet." "That's correct," Jinha said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We're here to help with the rebellion, as agreed."
Vextheras?
Crystalline face somehow managed to look amused. "Rebellion? There is no rebellion, Admiral. There are only lessons." Around the human fleet, more Council ships began to appear. They had been hidden, waiting. Jinha watched as his tactical officer's face went pale. "Sir, we're surrounded. One count over 300 Council vessels. They have us completely boxed in." Jinha's mind raced. This was not a mission to stop rebels. This was a trap, but why? What did the Council want? "I don't understand," Jinha said to Vexthera. "Where are the rebels we're supposed to fight? The rebels?" Vexthera laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "The rebels are a story we tell too. Young species. A useful lie. You are here to learn the truth about your place in the galaxy." On Earth, Ambassador Heron was in her office when the emergency alert came through. The quantum communication array lit up with signals from Jinha's fleet. What she heard made her blood run cold. "This is Admiral Ginha to Earth Command." His voice crackled through the speakers. "We have been deceived. Council has trapped our fleet. There are no rebels." Repeat, there are no rebels. Heron's hands shook as she activated the emergency protocols. How had she been so blind? How had she missed the signs that Jinha and Quan had tried to show her? Back in the Kepler 442 system, Admiral Vexera continued his explanation. "Your species has been most interesting to study. 3 years we have watched you fight the Vorth. 3 years we have learned about human tactics, human psychology, human weaknesses." "The Vorth," Jinha said slowly. "You control them." "Control is too simple a word," Vexera replied. "We guide them, aim them. The Vorth swarm is one of our oldest tools. We use them to weaken new species, to make them desperate enough to accept our help." Ginha felt sick. "Been using them to attack us, of course. How else would we learn what you are capable of? How else would we test your limits? The Vorth strip away everything except what makes a species truly dangerous. What remains is what we need to understand." On his bridge, Jinha's officers were listening to every word. He could see the anger building in their faces. These beings had killed billions of humans, had destroyed Mars, Europa, dozens of colonies, all for research. "But why?" Jinha asked. "Why study us at all?" Vexera's red light pulsed brighter. "Because you are different. Most species break under the Vorth assault. They surrender, they flee, they beg for mercy. But humans fight harder when cornered. You become more creative, more vicious, more unpredictable. And that scares you," Jinha realized. "Ears for lesser beings," Vexera said. "We are curious. Your species shows potential. With proper guidance, humans could become valuable servants of the Council." "Servants," Jinha repeated. "What did you think this was? An alliance between equals?" Vexera laughed again. "You're children playing with tools you don't understand. We are the masters of this galaxy. We have ruled here for 50,000 years." Jin had thought about Earth, about the billions of people depending on him. Thought about Huron, so hopeful and trusting. He thought about Quan, who had tried to warn them all. "And if we refuse to serve?" Ginha asked. "Damned. Then you will be eliminated," Vexera said simply. "The Vorth are already moving toward your home system. They will arrive at Earth in 7 days. Your choice is simple. Surrender now, and your people will be preserved as our subjects. Refuse, and they will be consumed." Jinha looked around his bridge at his officers. These were good people, brave people. They had followed him across the galaxy because they believed in humanity's future. Now that future was being stolen from them. "I need time to consider," Jinha said. "You have 1 hour," Vexera replied. "Then we will have your answer." The communication ended. Jinha's bridge fell silent, except for the hum of the ship's systems. Finally, his tactical officer spoke. "Sir, what are your orders?" Jinha made a decision that would change everything. Activate Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was something Jinha had created in secret, something only his most trusted officers knew about. It was a desperate measure designed for exactly this situation. "Sir, are you sure?" his communications officer asked. "Protocol 7 means... double quotes. I know what it means," Jinha said firmly. "Do it." Throughout the human fleet, hidden systems came online. Ships that looked dead began to move. Sensor drones, disguised as debris, deployed from every vessel. In minutes, the drones were scanning every Council ship, recording their formations, their weapons, shield frequencies. But Protocol 7 was more than just intelligence gathering. It was a message. "Attention all ships," Jinha broadcast. "To his fleet, we are going home. But we are not going home empty-handed." The human ships began to move, forming up for a hyperspace jump. The Council vessels moved to intercept, but they were too late. The human fleet vanished into hyperspace. Leaving behind only the sensor drones, Admiral Vexera was not concerned. Let the humans run. They would find the Vorth waiting for them at Earth. Soon, they would have no choice but to surrender. But Vexera did not know about the sensor drones. He did not know that in the space of 1 hour, humanity had gathered more intelligence about Council technology than any species in galactic history. On Earth, Haren received Jinha's emergency transmission. The recording showed everything: the trap, the revelation about the Vorth, the Council's true nature. She felt tears on her cheeks as she realized her mistake. She had trusted them. She had believed in their friendship, their partnership. 8. Had been so eager to find humanity's place in the galaxy that she had ignored every warning sign. But there was no time for regret. The Vorth were coming. Earth had 7 days to prepare for the final battle as Jinha's fleet raced toward home. The Admiral stared out at the stars. The Council thought they knew humanity. They thought they understood what humans did when cornered. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Back on Earth, emergency broadcasts went out to every human settlement, every ship, every station. The message was simple. The Council has betrayed us. The Vorth are coming. This is not a drill. Humanity had been played for fools. But humans had one advantage the Council had not counted on. When humans were betrayed, they didn't just get angry. They got creative. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Earth to find the worst fears confirmed. The Vorth swarm had arrived early. Millions of the insect-like creatures were already feeding on the outer asteroid belt, their dark shapes moving like a living cloud through space. Admiral Jinha watched from the bridge of the Soul's Pride as the swarm slowly moved toward Earth. They had maybe 6 days before the creatures reached the planet itself. Behind him, his communications officer was receiving reports from across the solar system. The Mars defense stations are gone. The Vorth consumed them 3 hours ago. The moon bases are evacuating now. Jinha nodded grimly. This was exactly what the Council had planned. Earth would be weakened, desperate, ready to accept any terms for survival. But the Council had made one critical mistake. They had given humanity time to think. On Earth, Engineer Quan was working in the deepest levels of the Global Defense Center. Around him, the brightest minds of humanity worked frantically on projects that would have been impossible just days before. The betrayal had changed everything. How long until the weapon modifications are complete? Dr. Song, Earth's leading physicist. The first batch will be ready in 18 hours, Quan replied, not looking up from his work. But I'm not sure they'll work. We're breaking every rule of physics we know. Good, Dr. Song said. The Council thinks they know our rules. Time to show them they're wrong. The data from Protocol 7 had been a gift beyond measure. Jinha's sensor drones had recorded everything about the Council fleet, their shield frequencies, their weapon signatures, even the quantum resonance patterns of their ship hulls. For the first time, humanity could see exactly how their enemy's technology worked. But more importantly, they could see how to break it. Ambassador Haren stood in the Global Assembly, dressing the leaders of every nation on Earth. She looked older than her years, worn down by guilt and determination. The Council played us perfectly, she said. They knew exactly what we wanted to hear. Hope, partnership, a place among the stars. She paused, looking around the room. But they made one mistake. They think they understand us. What do you mean? Asked the president of the European Federation. They think humans are just another species to be cataloged and controlled. They studied our tactics, our psychology, our weaknesses. But they never understood our strength, which is... Haren smiled for the first time in days. When you betray a human, you don't just make an enemy. You make something that will never stop coming for you. In the weeks that followed, humanity transformed. The betrayal had burned away every illusion about their place in the galaxy. They were not partners or allies. They were prey, and prey had two choices: be eaten or become the predator. Quan's engineering teams worked around the clock, building weapons that shouldn't exist. They took Council technology and twisted it in ways that made Council scientists weep. Human creativity, fueled by desperation and rage, produced innovations that defied logic. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A 12-year-old girl named Sujin, daughter of a reactor engineer, asked her father a simple question. Why do the Council ships need so many power cores? The answer changed everything. The Council's technology was based on harmony, on perfect balance between multiple systems. It was elegant, efficient, and utterly vulnerable to disruption. If we can make their systems fight each other, Quan explained to Jinha, their own ships will tear themselves apart. But the real revolution wasn't in technology. It was in thinking. For 3 years, humanity had fought the Vorth like a traditional enemy. They tried to destroy them, to outrun them, to find some weakness to exploit. But the Vorth were not really the enemy. They were a weapon. Weapons could be turned against their wielders. Dr. Song made the discovery while studying Vorth behavior patterns. They're not just mindless eating machines, she told the assembled War Council. They're following complex programming, and programming can be hacked. The plan that emerged was so audacious that it took Jinha's breath away. They weren't just going to fight the Council, they were going to use the Council's own weapon against them. It's insane, Jinha said when he heard the full proposal. Good, Haren replied. Insane is what we do best. The first test came when the Vorth reached Earth's moon. Instead of fighting them, humanity tried something different. They fed them. Designed satellites filled with metals that had been subtly altered at the quantum level were launched into the swarm's path. The Vorth consumed them eagerly, not realizing that each satellite contained a tiny piece of human-modified technology. Within hours, the effects began to show. Some Vorth began moving in new patterns. Others started avoiding certain areas of space. A few even began attacking their own kind. It's working, Quan reported. The quantum modifications are spreading through the swarm. They're starting to receive new instructions. But the real surprise came when the Council arrived to collect their victory. Admiral Vexera's fleet dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find Earth defenseless, ready to surrender. Instead, they found the Vorth swarm turning to face them. What is this? Exeta demanded over the communication channel. Gina's face appeared on the screen. He looked different now, harder, colder, but with a fire in his eyes that had not been there before. This is humanity saying hello, Jinha said calmly. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The Vorth, now under human control, attacked the Council fleet with tactics they had never seen before. They moved in coordinated patterns, targeted specific systems, and fought with a creativity that was purely human. But the Council had come prepared for a fight. Their massive warships began destroying the Vorth by the thousands. For a moment, it seemed like they might still win. That was when Jinha revealed humanity's real weapon. Quan, activate the resonance cascade. Every piece of Council technology that the Vorth had consumed over the years suddenly began to vibrate at the same frequency. The quantum resonance spread through the swarm and into the Council ships themselves. The elegant Council vessels, with their perfectly balanced systems, began to tear themselves apart. Their shields failed, their weapons overloaded, their engines exploded. In minutes, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy was reduced to floating debris. Admiral Vexeta's ship was among the last to die. As his crystalline body flickered and dimmed, he managed one final transmission. How? He asked. How did you do this? Achina's smile was cold as space. You spent 3 years studying us. You learned our tactics, our weaknesses, our psychology. But you never learned the most important thing about humans. What? Vexthera whispered. We learn from our mistakes, and we never make the same mistake twice. The Council fleet died in silence, their ships consumed by their own technology. The Vorth swarm, now fully under human control, began to disperse toward the outer rim of the galaxy. On Earth, Haren watched the battle from the global defense. Center tears streamed down her face, but they were not tears of sorrow, they were tears of pride. Humanity had been betrayed, used, and nearly destroyed, but they had survived. More than that, they had learned. And now, the galaxy was about to learn something too. Humans were no longer prey. 2 years had passed since the Battle of Earth. The galaxy had gone quiet around the Sol system. No ships came to investigate. No signals were sent. Most species believed that humanity had been destroyed, consumed by the Vorth swarm, along with the Council fleet that had gone to claim their victory. They were wrong. In the deep space around Centauri Prime, Admiral Vexcor of the remaining Council forces was preparing for another rescue mission. The peaceful Centauri colonies had been fighting the Vorth for months now, just as Earth had years before. Soon they would be desperate enough to accept Council help. "The Centauri are weakening," reported his aide, a young Althorian named Zethmar. "Their outer colonies have fallen. They should be ready to negotiate within days." Vexcor nodded, his crystalline body pulsing with satisfied light. The loss of Vexthura's fleet had been unfortunate, but not unexpected. Earth had been a special case, more dangerous than most. The Council had learned from that mistake. "Double the fleet size this time," Vexcor ordered. "Keep the Vorth on a shorter leash. Cannot afford another incident like the Sol system." But as the Council fleet prepared for their operation, something impossible appeared on their long-range sensors. "Sir," called the sensor operator, "I'm detecting hyperspace signatures approaching from the Sol system." "Impossible," Vexcor said. "Nothing could have survived there." "Sir, the signatures are ... wrong. They don't match any known ship design." On the main display, the approaching fleet began to resolve into individual contacts. Vexcor stared. In growing horror, these ships were not like anything in the galaxy. They moved in patterns that hurt to look at. Their hulls seemed to bend light itself, and their energy signatures defied every law of physics. "How many ships?" "Quietly, I count. This can't be right. The computer says there are both 12 ships and 12,000 ships in the same space." At the center of the impossible fleet, Admiral Jinha stood on the bridge of his flagship. The Sol's Pride had been rebuilt, transformed into something that would have been unrecognizable to its original designers. Its hull rippled with patterns that shifted between dimensions, and its engines drew power from folded space itself. "Sir, we're detecting the Council fleet," reported his tactical officer. The woman had changed too over the past 2 years. All of them had. When you spend 2 years rebuilding reality itself, it changes you. "How many ships?" Jinha asked. 437, sir. Standard Council formation." Jinha smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Signal the fleet. Let's show them what we've learned." The human fleet had taken 2 years to build, and it was humanity's greatest achievement. Every ship was a work of art and terror combined. They had taken the wreckage of the Council fleet, the remains of the Vorth swarm, and human engineering, and created something that should not exist. The ships could phase through normal space, appearing and disappearing at will. They could fold distance, making a light-year journey in seconds. Most terrifying of all, they could think together while remaining individual, creating a hive mind that kept human creativity. But the ships were not the most frightening thing about humanity's new fleet. The most frightening thing was the humans themselves. 2 years of desperate innovation had changed them. It pushed every boundary, broken every rule, refused to accept any limitation. They had become something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that could remake reality to fit their needs. "Open a channel to the Council fleet," Jinha ordered. Admiral Vexcor's crystal face appeared on the screen. He tried to hide his fear, but Jinha could see the terror in his flickering lights. "This is Admiral Vexcor of the Galactic Council." "You are in violation of..." "No," Jinha interrupted. "You are in violation? You are in violation of the most basic law of the universe." "What law?" Vexcor demanded. "Don't betray humanity." The human fleet struck without warning. But this was not a battle in any traditional sense. The human ships didn't fire weapons. They rewrote the rules of space around the Council. Vessels, Council ships that had existed for centuries suddenly found themselves in impossible positions. Some were turned inside out. Others were aged 10,000 years in seconds. Few simply ceased to exist, their atoms scattered across dimensions that had no names. "What are you doing?" Vexcor screamed, as his fleet dissolved around him. "We're showing you what happens when humans have time to think," Jinha replied calmly. "You've studied us for 3 years, Admiral. You've learned our tactics, our psychology, our weaknesses. But you made one mistake." "What mistake?" "You assumed we would stay the same." The Council fleet tried to fight back, but their weapons passed through the human ships like light through water. The humans had learned to exist in spaces between dimensions, to phase in and out of reality at will. "This is impossible," VexCore said. "Physics doesn't work this way." "Physics works however we tell it to," Jinha replied. "We've had 2 years to have a conversation with the universe. We've come to an understanding." In the space around Centauri Prime, the local defense forces watched in amazement as the Council fleet simply vanished. Not destroyed, vanished, erased from existence as if they had never been. But the human fleet was not finished. They had not come just to destroy the Council forces. They had come to send a message. "Attention, species of the galaxy," Jinha broadcasted. "On all frequencies, this is Admiral Jinha of the Earth Fleet. For too long you have lived in fear of the Council and their weapons. No more. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, beings stopped what they were doing to listen. The Council has ruled through deception and fear. They have used the Vorth swarm to weaken you, then offered false salvation. They have made slaves of entire species and called it civilization. On distant worlds, species that had served the Council for centuries began to look up at the stars with new hope. But the Council made a mistake. They betrayed Earth. They thought they could use us, study us, control us. They were wrong."
Ash.
Jinha's image appeared on screens across the galaxy. He looked different now. Older, harder, but with eyes that burned. With an inner fire, the Council is broken. Their fleets are scattered. Their weapons are useless. The galaxy is free. He paused, looking directly into the camera. But freedom is not free. It must be earned, and it must be protected. Earth offers you a choice. Stand with us, and we will ensure that no species ever again faces what we faced. Stand against us, and learn what the Council learned. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. On Earth, Ambassador Heron watched the broadcast from her office. She had changed too over the past 2 years. The naive diplomat who had trusted the Council was gone, replaced by someone who understood the true nature of power. "Sir?" her aide asked. "What happens now?" Heron smiled. "We see who our friends are." Across the galaxy, the Council's client species faced a choice. Some, the ones who had willingly served the Council, chose to fight. Others, the ones who had been forced into service, chose freedom, but all of them learned the same lesson that humanity was no longer the prey species that had begged for help 3 years ago. They had become something new, something that could reshape reality itself. They had become the force that would determine the galaxy's future, and they were just getting started. The ancient Council homeworld of Alderus had stood for 50,000 years. Its crystal spires reached into the sky like frozen music, and its cities hummed with the power of 1,000 civilizations. It was the heart of galactic power, the center of everything the Council had built. Admiral Jinha watched it burn from the bridge of the Soul's Pride. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the last Council stronghold has fallen. The planet is ours." Jinha nodded, but there was no satisfaction in his eyes. This was not a victory to celebrate. This was a lesson that had to be taught. The final battle had not been a battle at all. It had been a demonstration. When the human fleet arrived at Aldorus, they found the entire Council defense force waiting for them. 10,000 ships, the largest armada ever assembled, focused on protecting the Council's ancient seat of power. The Council leaders themselves had fled deep underground, hiding in bunkers that had been built to survive the death of stars. They thought they were safe. They thought their defenses were impenetrable. They were wrong. The human fleet had not attacked the Council ships. They had not fired a single weapon. Instead, they had done something far more terrifying. They had simply wished the Council fleet away. Engineer Quan, now bearing the title of Chief Reality Architect, had spent 2 years learning to speak the universe's language. He had discovered that reality was not fixed, not permanent. It was more like a conversation, and humans had learned to join that conversation. "Phase displacement complete," Quan reported from his station. "Council fleet has been relocated to the Andromeda Galaxy." It should arrive in approximately 2 million years. Ginha almost smiled. Almost. And the planetary defenses turned into flowers, sir. Daisies, mostly. The transformation of Aldoris had been beautiful and terrible. The Council's mighty fortresses had become gardens. Their weapons platforms had become fountains. Their shield generators had become trees that sang in the wind. But the people of Aldoris had not been harmed. That was important. Humanity had learned to be precise in their anger. Open a channel to the council chambers, Jinha ordered. Deep. Beneath the planet's surface, Council Chairman Velthak received the transmission. He was ancient, even by council standards, and had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. He had seen species rise and fall, had ordered the destruction of entire civilizations, had never once doubted his right to rule. Now, for the first time in millennia, he felt fear. This is Admiral Ginha of Earth. The human's voice echoed through the chamber. You wanted to study us, Chairman. Now you can observe us up close. The walls of the underground chamber began to change. The metal and crystal grew transparent, revealing the human fleet floating in space far above. But that was not the truly terrifying part. The truly terrifying part was that Jinha was standing in the chamber with them. That's impossible, Velthak whispered. You're on your ship. I am. Ginha agreed. I'm also here. Distance is just a suggestion now. The other council members pressed back against the walls, their various forms of terror clear on their alien faces. The crystalline Althorians dimmed their lights. The gaseous Netheri pulled their forms tight. The four-armed Corvani wrapped their limbs around themselves. What do you want? Velthak asked. I want you to understand, Jinha said simply. For 50,000 years, you have ruled this galaxy through fear and deception. You have used the Vorth to weaken species, then offered salvation at the cost of freedom. You have made slaves of entire civilizations. We brought order, Velthak protested. We brought peace. We brought submission, Jinha corrected. There is a difference. On Earth, Ambassador Haran was addressing the gathered representatives of 100 species. They had come to Sol System after Jinha's broadcast, seeking answers, seeking hope, seeking a future that did not include council rule. The question before us, Haran said, is what comes next. The council's power is broken. Their fleets are scattered, their weapons are useless. The galaxy is free to choose its own path. A delegate from the Centauri colonies raised a tentacle. But who will maintain order? Who will keep the peace between species? We will, Haran replied. Us. Together. It was a radical idea. For 50,000 years, the galaxy had been ruled by a single power. The concept of voluntary cooperation, of species working together as equals, was almost unthinkable. But then, humans had become good at making the unthinkable happen. Back on Alaris, Chairman Veltic was learning the scope of his defeat. Ginha had shown him the truth. The Council's ancient empire was crumbling. Their client species were declaring independence. Their hidden fleets were being found and dealt with. Their secret weapons were being turned into art installations. You cannot destroy 50,000 years of civilization, Velthak said desperately. Not destroying it? Ginha replied. I'm changing it. You built an empire based on fear and lies. I'm replacing it with something better. What? Velthak asked. Choice. The change had already begun. Across the galaxy, species that had served, the Council for centuries were making their own decisions for the first time. Some chose to continue their old ways. Others chose to experiment with new forms of government. A few chose to join the growing alliance centered on Earth. All of them had the right to choose. But how will you maintain control? Velthak asked. How will you prevent chaos? We won't, Jinha said. That's the point. We're not going to rule the galaxy. We're going to protect it. It was a concept that Velthak could not understand. Power was meant to be used, to be held, to be expanded. The idea of having ultimate power and choosing not to use it was alien to him, but it was perfectly human. What happens to us? Look, asked quietly. You live, Jinha said. You learn. You try to understand what you did wrong. and maybe, someday, you find a way to make things right. The council leadership was transported to a small planet in the Outer Rim. It was a beautiful world, with clean air and fresh water and everything they needed to survive. But it had no advanced technology, no weapons, no way to contact the outside galaxy. They would have to learn to live as ordinary beings. Without power, without control, without the ability to command others. It was, Gina thought, a fitting punishment. Years passed, the galaxy slowly adapted to its new reality. Species that had been enemies for millennia learned to work together. Trade routes that had been controlled by the council opened to everyone. Knowledge that had been hoarded was shared freely. There were problems, of course. Some species tried to fill the power vacuum left by the council's fall. Others struggled with the concept of self-determination. A few attempted to rebuild the old systems, but humanity was there, watching, protecting, ensuring that no species would ever again face what Earth had faced. Ginha, now older and carrying the weight of the galaxy's safety on his shoulders, stood. On the observation deck of the Soul's Pride, the ship had become a symbol of hope for free species everywhere. "Sir," his aide approached, "receiving reports of conflict in the Outer Rim. Some of the former Council client species are fighting over territory. Are they threatening any peaceful worlds?" Ginha asked. "No, sir. It appears to be a dispute between willing participants." Jinha nodded. "Then we observe. Do not interfere unless someone asks for help." It was the hardest part of humanity's new role. It had the power to impose peace, to force cooperation, to rule just as the Council had ruled. But they chose not to. They chose to let the galaxy find its own way. "Sir," the aide continued, "there's also a message from the Centauri Alliance. They're requesting human advisors to help establish their new government. Send volunteers," Jin said. "Make sure they understand they're there to advise, not to command." On Earth, Haren was writing the final report on the Council War. It would be read by generations of humans, a reminder of what happened when power was used without wisdom. She ended the report with a simple statement: "We were betrayed by those we trusted. We were nearly destroyed by those we thought were our friends. But we survived, we learned, we grew stronger, and we made sure that no one else would ever face what we faced." The galaxy had learned a new truth. Humans were not just survivors. They were not just conquerors. They were something far more dangerous and far more wonderful. They were the guardians of choice itself, and they would never let anyone forget it. In the end, the Council's greatest mistake was not underestimating human strength. It was not understanding human values. They thought humans fought for survival, for dominance, for power. They were wrong. Humans fought for the right to choose their own destiny. And once they won that right, they made sure everyone else could have it too. The galaxy was free, and it would stay free because humanity was watching.